Hello all and welcome to the disassembly video of the G&G M14 Mod 0 Enhanced Battle Rifle AEG marketed by G&G as the GR14 HBA-S. In this video we'll be disassembling the AEG section by section, pointing out the tools required and some things to watch out for so you don't break it or lose parts. The tools required for this disassembly are a 2mm hex key, a 2.5mm hex key, a 3mm hex key and a 4mm hex key. Not shown in this part of the video, a very thin screwdriver such as a 1/2 inch hex key and a small hammer. First, using the 2.5mm hex key, remove the 6 screws for the battery compartment as normal. Then remove the battery cover from the lower receiver. Remove any batteries, sights and sight mounts if any. On this example we have a Gate Electronics MERF 3.2 MOSFET fitted and it must be removed. A stock M14 will not have this. Next, on the upper receiver, using a 3mm hex key, undo the 6 screws on top, leaving the screws in the rail and remove the rail from the lower receiver. Now, using a 4mm hex key, undo the 2 bolts on either side of the lower receiver to free the barrel from it. Now onto the trigger mechanism. Using a long rod-like tool, insert it into the hole in the trigger guard just behind the trigger. Then lever the trigger guard back to unlock it and then forward to unlock the whole thing. Lastly, pull the trigger mechanism down to remove it fully from the AEG. To remove the barrel and mech box, grab the upper receiver and lever it up so that the barrel comes out. Then pull gently on the upper receiver both up and forwards to remove the barrel, mech box and motor from the lower receiver. At this point I would like to add that if a battery was connected, you can test if the mech box works by pushing the metal piece forward as shown by the red arrow in the picture. Moving on to the underside of the mech box, start by pulling towards the front of the AEG the magazine retention catch. Remove it and its spring, keeping them both together. Next, unscrew the 2 parts as shown and then remove the cocking handle by prising it gently from the rails and the bolt cover. Now, remove the fire selector lever by moving the selector between the auto and semi-auto position. Rotate the lever until it lines up with a small piece holding it down and lift it off the mech box. Then remove the fake bolt cover buffer tube. To remove the barrel, flip the mech box upside down. Locate the 2 screws just in front of the BB tube and using a 3mm hex key, undo and remove them. Once they're undone, you can pull the barrel and AEG style hop-up chamber from the mech box. The inner barrel and hop-up chamber is removable from the outer barrel just by pulling it. The stock inner barrel is a brass 407mm barrel, which is not a tight bore. I have since replaced mine with a tight bore barrel of the same length. To put the barrel back in place, simply push it back in. It is held in place by friction. To remove the gearbox shroud, first, remove the bolt cover from the top. Then, use a 2mm hex key and undo the 2 screws as seen on the right side of the shroud. Once those are removed, flip the whole thing over to the left side. Locate the bolt release catch. The 3rd screw sits underneath it. Here, you will need a small screwdriver and a small hammer as mentioned in the start of this video. Take note that under this catch is a small spring, so remove the catch slowly after you've completed the next step, which involves the hammering. Now that you are warned, using the screwdriver, place it on the side of the catch where there is a small pin. and hammer the back of the screwdriver until the pin comes out. Now either remove the pin with your hands or a pair of pliers, taking care not to let the spring fly out. Once you have done this, remove the catch entirely and unscrew the last screw. The shroud can now be removed, though it can take some jiggling about to remove it successfully. This is G&G's take on a version 7 gearbox. Before we start disassembly of it, first locate the silver pin on the left side or the bottom of the gearbox. Then, using any tool, push the pin towards the motor. This decompresses the spring. I normally do this twice just to make sure. Next, using a 2mm hex key, undo the screws holding the motor cage on this side only first. Then remove the motor wires out of the way. Next, flip the gearbox back over to the top side and now remove the trigger spring, which is sprung between the trigger lever as shown earlier and the motor cage mount between the two holes. Now undo the last two screws and slide the mount off. Finally, slide the motor cage with the motor off too. At this point I would like to add some other videos have suggested to prise the motor cage off the gearbox. Mine simply slid off. I will also add that the motor cage is a fragile piece, so please take care of it or have a spare ready to hand. With all those parts removed, we are nearly ready to open the gearbox. The last bit to do is sliding the black cylinder cover off. I use my hands, though you may need a hammer and a suitable flathead tool to knock it off. After removing it a few times, it should just slide off by hand. Use a screwdriver, or in my case a 3mm hex key, and slide this into the rear of the gearbox to hold down the spring. Using a 2mm hex key, undo the 3 screws on the top side of the gearbox. Remove the screws and you are now able to open the gearbox. Prise the front of the gearbox open carefully using a tool like I have here. Using both hands and a bit of force, carefully separate the two halves apart, taking care to hold down the cylinder to control the spring. Once you have removed the top of the gearbox, take the spring guide out to relieve the tension. G&G have had their own take on the version 7 gearbox, and because of this, this gearbox case is not compatible with other AEG M14s. However, some parts within the gearbox can be bought from third-party airsoft suppliers. I will now go through the gearbox telling you what is and isn't G&G proprietary. Starting from the front is the AEG style air nozzle, which works in conjunction with the BB feeder below. The tappet plate is G&G proprietary. The cylinder head and cylinder are also G&G proprietary. The spring guide is a standard version 3 spring guide. The stock one is made from plastic but does have a ball bearing washer at the bottom of it. Any standard AEG spring can be used. In this case it's an M100 spring. The piston and piston head are version 2 compatible. This video shows a piston made by SHS and the piston head is a GMP explosive piston head. The trigger mechanism is again another G&G proprietary system. Next is the tappet spring, which is easily removed. The bevel, spur and sector gears are all standard version 2 gears, so can be replaced with any third-party gears. And lastly is the G&G proprietary anti-reversal latch. G&G do sell the proprietary parts from a variety of airsoft retailers. I would recommend that if you plan to purchase and keep this AEG for the long run, to purchase a spare tappet plate. I broke the original tappet plate from this one the first time I opened the gearbox, as they are very fragile but they are easy to find. And buy a second motor cage, which is a little trickier to find. Lastly, in the previous video I mentioned that some screws needed gluing and will cover it here. I would recommend you purchase some kind of mild thread lock glue such as Loctite thread glue. Nearly all the screws that need gluing are in the lower receiver, and they are the front lower rails where you would normally attach a bipod, front side rails, rear sling mount screws, this screw below the rear sling mount inside the motor cavity, and the pistol grip plate screws, all of them as shown. In the next video I'll be going through the reassembly of this AEG from the gearbox to complete. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it, leave any comments in the comments section down below, or if you have any questions, and I will try and respond to them. Thanks again.